or maybe not, I don't know. I'm not sure who's doing more work.
I am. I'm sure.
Okay, so now that's what I was talking about right there. So she went about a lap and a half, and then she went down to her trot.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, I quit before she did.
Well, I know,
Okay.
but she shouldn't have quit at all, is the point.
Okay.
But she went about a lap and a half, and then she quit. Okay? You shouldn't have to be working that hard. We should just be able to ask her to canter, and she should be able to canter. With your guidance.
Okay.
So I'm not saying we would ask her to canter, just stand in the middle. You know, we would
Well,
have some movement there, but I wouldn't do that much
That's
movement.
what
That's
I,
too
a lot
much
of
for,
times
I'm too old for that. But the point that I was going to make, and it was clear here when she was cantering, she's not breathing. And so what you're going to get almost always in a case like that is that she will lope for maybe a lap, lap and a half, sometimes 2 laps, depending on how worried they are, troubled they are. And then they're just going to stop and go back to the trot. And then what we usually do is then we allow that to happen, then we change directions, do whatever it is that we're going to do, but she never does breathe. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important for a couple of reasons. And there's a couple of red flags that have gone up just in some of the stuff that you were talking about. One of them is that, 90% of the time this mare is pretty okay. 10% of the time she's dangerous. Okay. Yeah, my guess is that even in that other 90% of the time, she's still probably not okay. She's just better. Okay, she's probably more comfortable. She gets into a situation where she's not comfortable, that's when all of the behavior shows up. It is probably showing up in other ways, even when it looks like she's okay. So where this comes from a lot of times is the fact that the mare is not breathing. So when she was standing over here, she wasn't breathing. When she was outside, she wasn't breathing. She's not breathing now. She wasn't breathing when she was canting. She's breathing enough to keep herself upright, but it's very shallow. So basically what you got is she's breathing like we were talking about before. It's sort of a fight, flight, or freeze breath. Okay? So when we ask her to canter, there's a pattern that we go through. We all do. And as a therapist, you probably understand this, what I'm getting ready to say. But when there's some kind of trauma or perceived trauma, what ends up happening is that we kind of lock that trauma up in our body, and it should get released at some point, some kind of way. Okay? Animals are really good at releasing trauma. They're really good at it. And there's a sort of a 4-step process that they go through. Okay? So the first step of and same thing with people. So I'll just talk about people. It's the same thing with any animal, but we can understand it better if I talk about it with people. So let's say we're walking down the street and we see somebody's middle of the day. We see somebody that looks kind of shady coming towards us. We may look at that person who looks kind of shady and go, "Oh, it's broad daylight. There's people around. I don't have anything to worry about, right?" So while we're thinking that or trying to rationalize that out, our body is already going on alert. We can't stop it from doing that. So what ends up happening is our breathing starts to change. That's the first thing that starts happening. Those chemicals start to get released into the body. The pupils start to dilate. Blood runs out of the extremities and goes into the core. Digestion starts to shut down. Our hands start to sweat, palms of our hands and the bottoms of our feet. All that starts to happen without us even knowing that is happening. Okay, that's the very first thing that happens. The body goes on alert. Okay, that's the first step in the process. Second step in the process is, let's say this guy, we walk along, he goes to grab us and actually gets a hold of us or something. And we fight, and then, so the fighting and all that other stuff, that's the second. We run and we get away. Third step in the process. Okay? Now at that point, we're not breathing very well. And all we're doing is we're just running. Now, we're going to run as far and as fast as we can until we can't run anymore because we're not oxygenating the muscles, because we're not breathing very well. At that point, we're going to slow down, maybe stop, or at the very least go into a walk. We're going to try and catch our breath, and while we're catching our breath, our body will go into a tremor.
Yes.
Okay? That tremor then is what resets the body back into a normal state. Okay? So it's a 4-step process. All animals do it. All of them. So when you ask this horse to go to canter, one of the things that you may have going on here, is that she's got something kind of locked up in there. Now she's feeling a little better, just that little opening that she just did there with her. But if there's some kind of trauma or perceived trauma or anything like that going on, which is what she had in here when you first started, what she does is she'll stop breathing. That's what all that was when she started to holler here and she kind of threw herself backwards. That's all that. She can't get away. And so my guess is if you would have just turned her loose in here, and without a horse standing right here, if everything was closed up, she would have just run around.
Yes, and she does.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she does.
Yeah. And
It
she
starts out slow. You can see her walk pick up.
Mhm.
She trots for maybe a quarter length. She canters, and then she just spins herself
Mhm.
up.
Mhm.
And if I would just come out and walk and stand in the middle and ask her to do something, I can break that pattern for her.
Mhm.
But she can't. She doesn't seem to be able to break it by herself.
Well, you know why? It's because she's not getting to the end of it.
Okay.
Okay, getting to the end of it, what she's trying to do is release that, whatever it is. She may have been traumatized as a baby that never got released. It doesn't matter what it is. But that doesn't surprise me that she would do that because this is sort of textbook of a horse that's been traumatized where the trauma is locked up in them.
Okay.
So that running that they do, now eventually she's going to stop. She has to. Right? Eventually she's just going to be out of air. She's going to have to stop. Now it may take a while, but she's going to do it. But if you let her do that, instead of interrupting her, so right now what's happening is, let's say that she runs in here, generally the first time she was going to come in here, I'm just throwing numbers out, doesn't mean anything. She was going to come in here and she was going to run for 5 minutes and then she would have been able to release the trauma. Okay? Let's just say that was going to happen. What ended up happening, and I'm just throwing numbers out again,
Yeah.
so we were watching it, we got worried, went, oh my God, I got to do something about that. She's going to hurt herself, so you break the pattern, right? So now, instead of it being 5 minutes, next time she does it, it's going to be 7 or 8 minutes. At 5 minutes, I go out, and I save her again, break the pattern. Now it's 10 minutes. And every time I break the pattern before she's through it, now it's going to lengthen that time that she's stuck in it, right? Because she's not getting to the end of it. So now you might find you put her in here, she might run for 20 minutes before she even thinks about slowing down. I'm just throwing numbers out. But every time we break the pattern without her getting in it, every time we interrupt the pattern without her getting through it, it's going to get longer. It's going to get longer. It's going to get longer. And so the running part of it is actually the part that she needs to do in order to release whatever's going on in there. And here's why. Because my guess is when she's running like that, she is not breathing very well. Like here, she stopped and she was breathing, but it was really, really shallow. So she's not breathing very well. When she goes to bucking, everything's bottled up and she's just trying to get this out of her. And from on, the bucking's going to stop unless you stop the bucking. Right? She starts bucking and I'm going to say, no, I don't want you to do that. You know, that then interrupts the pattern. And if we shoot her through that and let her move through it and just keep moving and keep moving and keep moving until you start hearing her breathing properly.
Okay.
Breathing properly in the canter is every time she pushes off on the outside hind, she exhales. Every time. So it's every time she pushes off on the outside hind, you would hear a every time she pushes off on the outside hind. Not that's all here. She's breathing properly, but it's very shallow. You want it to hear, it should look like a billows when she stops, that her flanks are moving like this. And you want to be able to hear that where it's deep and it's coming all the way through, where she's using the whole lung. Okay? Then you let her stop and stand. And just let her stand there. And what you will probably find after a couple of minutes of just standing there, Providing she wants to stand, she may want to just take off again, in which case we go the other way, we do exactly the same thing until we get that breathing. Almost always you're going to go the other way, she's going to be holding her breath again. Even if she was breathing perfectly, going the one direction, you turn it around and go the other way, she'll probably hold her breath again. Get her breathing going both directions, let her stand, and before long you're going to see her start to shake. So she'll start with her head, and eventually that shake will get all the way back to her tail. Then you'll have a different horse that dance. But until that happens, these patterns are going to keep coming back. You probably will only have to do it one time. You see, what's happened is that
Well, I've let her out in the other arena by herself, and she gets herself spun up, and I've left her out there like for half a day, and I don't watch her the whole time. How is that?
it doesn't help if she's not breathing.
Okay.
She's got to be breathing.
So do I have to help her run then if she's not?
We have to get her breathing.
Okay.
So she's going to self-regulate. Here's the deal.
Okay.
She's going to self-regulate. So what she's going to do, especially if that pattern's been interrupted,
Okay.
what she's going to do is she's going to go as far and as fast as she can, and then she just start trotting. Okay? She can go an awful long ways. All horses can go a very, very long way in the trot without having to breathe very well. In the canter, they can't do that.
Okay.
Okay? So what you'll probably find is, yeah, she's getting pretty spun up, but most of that's probably in the trot.
Okay.
She may be cantering and galloping some, but it won't be. She may do 2, 3, 4, 5 laps. Then you'll see her trotting, because she's going to self-regulate. She's just going to say, well, I can't breathe, so I'm going to have to slow down. She'll catch her breath, and then off she goes again. But she's never getting all the way through to where she needs to get in order to have that whole process come through. And as many times as it's been interrupted, again, it could be a day before she actually lets it all go. We don't know.
Yeah.
But you can at least regulate it here when she's on the line. And be looking for certain things, and then be able to stop her when the thing shows up. So that she doesn't stop herself and then take off again. You see what I'm saying? And start herself back up into the pattern.
So in my world, that's the difference between cognitive therapy and deeper therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Where cognitive, you're changing the way a person thinks about something,
Mm-hmm.
but not allowing the body to release.
Yes.
And unless, at least in my limited experience, unless it's released from the body, it comes up in another way.
That's right.
Yeah.
The same thing. We all have it. So it's that idea that, and it won't take anything to trip her over into it.
Yeah.
You move her from one point to another point, and she'll trip over into it.
Yeah.
And she's dangerous because
Well,
she's not thinking.
And that's the tricky part for me, is she can go along and just be so steady, but I can't relax on her.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I would say she probably feels more steady on the trail maybe than Cinnamon, because if a piece of plastic comes out, and Cinnamon goes.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that Cinnamon's gonna move 5 steps, and then she's gonna release, and that's just, I can deal with that, so I can relax on her. I always feel a little vigilant, not because of anything that I can see that triggers her. Sometimes she just gets triggered from what I can't see.
That's what I mean.
And there's no, a lot of times I can feel something coming. I can feel a hump building, or I can feel energy changing. She's like a light switch at times, and I don't, and
It's because she's carrying it full time. So it doesn't matter. And anything could set her off because she's on edge all the time.
okay.
When we're talking about those chemicals, when we're breathing in our chest, and we're not breathing very well, and they're like dominoes that trip over, right? And so when that last domino trips over,
Yeah.
we go from the thinking part of the brain into the instinctive part of the brain, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we can go along and look like nothing's wrong with us, right?
Right.
Nothing at all, everything feels fine, everything looks fine, right? Then you go into a restaurant, right? And so you're in the restaurant, and then the waitress drops some dishes,
Yeah.
and everybody in the place jumps.
Yeah.
Those people who just jumped are the people who aren't breathing properly. And all it took was those plates dropping, and it set them off. They went from the thinking part of the brain into the instinctive part of the brain. You know what I'm talking about now?
Yes.
That's what this mirror has going on. If I had to guess, that would be my guess.
Okay.
So she just isn't, she's not all the way through, whatever it is that she's been struggling with, she's not all the way through it. And that could be a trauma, that could be a physical trauma, it could have been an emotional trauma, it could be anything.
And I don't
We don't know. We don't know. So, what we might just try, just for the fun of it, is get her out here and let's see if we can't get her lunging. Now, you don't have to canter with her, right? Let's get her cantering. And we'll talk about, while she's doing it, we'll talk about when she's breathing properly and when she's not. Okay? I have to run over the dog. So right now, here there's no breath going in or out. Here. See that little bit right there? Go. So what you just saw there was as far as she could go on one breath. See, she's still not breathing here. Nothing coming in, nothing coming out. You see what I'm talking about as far as self-regulating there, where she's trying to get herself back to the trot? She can catch her breath in the trot. See? That's what this is all about. That's all stuff.
And that's usually the lead-in, that head shake. Breathe.
Yes, because she's on the verge of trying to breathe.
Yeah.
See, now there she's breathing properly, but hear how shallow it is. Seeing that? So she could only go that far, just breathing that shallow, and then she comes down to the trot. That's what's happening right now. See? As far as she can go. Okay.
And I can tell she's worried by her bottom lip.
Mm-hmm.
Her bottom lip, to me, is my read on her. When she's really not feeling good about something, that lip just gets so tense.
Well, I can tell you something about what you're doing with her right now. You can stop for a second. I can tell you something about what's going on here. Okay? So, if you think about people, okay, you start thinking about people who have been traumatized. Yeah. It gets to a point a lot of times where that's who they become. They become that traumatized person, right? And so they're comfortable there. And so you start trying to deal with that. I don't think I like that very much. This is no different with animals, any other animal, than it is with us. So what you're dealing with is that you're dealing with a pattern here. This pattern is there, and it's kind of, this is about as textbook as you'd ever want to see it. As far as how she's dealing with this, I can only go this far, and I'm starting to breathe, and I don't like that, so I'm going to come back down to the trot. Even though she's breathing better, which would help her movement, she doesn't want to do it. And so what you're seeing is this is one of those situations where we would really need to get her moving and get her cantering consistently all the way around so that she's not dictating when she's slowing down, when she's not, and get it to a point where she's just cantering smoothly and fluidly. Then she's going to start breathing deeper. Then you're going to start seeing changes in her body. That bottom lip's going to let go. That tail's going to start looking different. The movement of her muscles is going to start feeling and looking better. The whole picture is going to start to change. Once that happens, then we stop her. And then see what happens. Right? But this alertness that she's got going on there, you can tell we didn't even scratch the surface with it.
And I think somewhere in my body when I'm riding her, I know that because.
Oh yeah. Oh, see, and that's what I mean. Your body already knows. Even before you get on that horse, you already know. Something's not right.
Yeah.
And you know it.
Yeah.
She knows it, and so do you.
Yeah.
You bet. And that's why there's that concern. This is not a horse I would be putting in harness.
And I'm clear about that because.
Not until this
was-
gets cleared up.
As I was even thinking about this, what I imagine happening is she accepts the harness. I think she accepts the harness fine. I think she drives fine. I think we put the cart on and she goes fine for about 3/4 of the way around, and then she busts loose. That's just how
Well, it may not even be that. It may be 5 years, and then she busts loose. I mean, it could be. This is one of those things where you just don't know. This is one of the things that's most overlooked, and it is the most dangerous.
That's my sense about this, and I guess I couldn't put words to it, and I didn't know why, but I have a sense, even though she's pretty responsive, and I can feel softness with her when I'm riding at times. There's something else that I feel in my body. For me, I don't trust, and I have not been able to figure out why.
That's what this is. That's what you're dealing with. So this is not a safe horse. Okay. Now, and the reason I say that, I don't say it very often. Normally what I will say is that she's a safe horse, but she's got dangerous behavior. That's different.
That's different.
This is a dangerous horse because she's unpredictable.
Yes.
She's unpredictable because there's something not right inside. And for my money, I would start with this. I would see if we couldn't get her loping and see if we couldn't get her to keep loping until we started to see what we're looking for here. And see if that doesn't change it. With her, you might have to do it a few times. But usually it doesn't take more than a couple, 3 times. With the worst horse that I've ever seen. Okay? If that's what it is. I mean, it could be other things. It could have been something, it could be neurologic. It could be something, it could have been inbreeding. We just don't know. But I can tell you that just from watching her here, that a big part of this is something's locked up and she's not breathing very well. And so and she's trying to regulate herself to a point where she doesn't have to change what she's doing and the way she feels. You can see it in her. It's not a big mystery. It's not like she's trying to hide it. So this is not a horse I'd be riding, and certainly not a horse I'd put in harness until I felt a lot better about this. And even then, I would question it, because you just never know if you're all the way through it. I mean, you may find that you are, but I would be, I'd give it 6 months to, do this and then get her to where she's breathing properly, get her to where things are working, where she's really doing what you're asking her to do, and give her 6 months and see if that behavior is still around, is it still happening, you still see that, the erratic stuff.
Yeah.
That's, then you're probably dealing with something deeper, something not quite right from the day she came out.
Just from a therapy perspective, one of the reasons that I've even kept her is so many people that come in. I take them out and I introduce them to the horses, and they see her, they pick her to work with, they identify with her, they say, that's me. And they go crap. But there's something that is just innate about that.
Well, like attracts like. Like attracts like.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you'll find that if you get her, if you can, here, let me take her for just a little bit. Let's see if we can play with her a little bit. already she's not breathing. And I can hear her breathing there. But it's pretty shallow. But that's the correct breathing pattern. Hear it? So what I'm doing is I'm just catching her before she quits. You see how she's building here? That's probably what you see when she's on her own. See, we've got to kind of over that hump of I can't do it. Instead of going down, now she's going up faster.
Laura, which foot had that bone chip?
Left four.
Left front.
Can you hear now that's a little
Yes.
deeper?
Yeah.
You know, there's a change starting to happen here. Dig through there. And there she flared up again, see it?
Yep.
There, now she's starting to use herself a little bit. Just as she started to use herself better, she tried to quit. So you saw her hindquarters start to come underneath her a little bit in there. You see what I'm saying is that she's interrupting herself
Yep.
from feeling better. There she's starting to use herself a little better now. There she just did. See how her hindquarters are starting to come underneath her a little bit? There it is again, see it?
Yep.
And just as that started to happen, there she was again. You see, that time when we boosted her up, she didn't take off like she was shot out of a gun. That a girl. There, see, now she's trying to get on the right lead. Correct lead, I mean. Now, see the float that's starting to happen?
Yes. Yes.
So the body's starting to change a little bit, see it?
Yep.
There, see it? And when we boost her up a little bit, she doesn't feel like she has to grab her tail. Girl, now we're talking. So now listen to the rhythm of her breathing and the rhythm of her feet. See how closely matched they are now? That's what we're talking about. See the change in her body now?
Yep.
Okay, now here is where we let her come down and watch her. Here. that was just all her. She wanted to move, so we'll just go again. That looks really nice. Okay, I'm just going to bring her back down and see what she does. Maybe that sort of billow sound. I would rather that she doesn't come up to me because it'd be really easy for her to come up here and stand and have this start to work through, and then her reach over and touch me and it breaks the pattern. You know, she just stopped herself from breathing.
Yeah. It's kind of like she went back on alert. Whatever's out there that she's fixated on. Or me.
This is really, really typical of a horse that's stuck on the inside. The amount of work that she did right now, this should just be doing this. So you should be see, but her breathing kicked up right away. Now, what we would like to see her do here is while she's standing here, you see the breathing happening now? That's what we're looking for. So, you see the way her flanks are moving? There, that big breath there. Here, how it should be just with her standing. She's just standing here, she's holding her breath.
And I can see her alertness, white around her eyes, elevated head.
But look at the way she, now that's not uncommon. It'll take her a couple of minutes for everything to kind of dissipate, and then her head's going to start to drop. There's the shake starting to come through. You'll feel that all those chemicals are going to start to. It takes a few minutes. You just got to be patient. So, but also all that movement that she was doing again. That's that pattern. I got to go. I got to go. I just said, just stand there for a second. Just take a second. And just catch your breath. She stepped back and then cocked her foot. And went, okay. Let me see what happens here. But even this, where this should be really big, is real shallow. So she should be breathing a lot deeper than she is right now, with the amount of work that she just did. So that gives you an idea. There's that shake again. It gives you an idea of how stuck, whatever that is inside her, that's how stuck it is. We really like it for seeing all that little stuff there that kind of interrupts. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She's trying to get it done. The body is trying to change itself, but emotionally, this has been, I hate to use the word, but this has been interrupted enough that she's not able to get all the way through it. So you see what I'm talking about? So again, from a training standpoint, and from, see there, she's not breathing again, here.
Right.
So you see how little I'm doing as far as what I'm offering her here. But my energy is enough to say, I still need my energy, not my actions. My energy is enough to say that I'm looking for you to keep loping here. She just started breathing here. she's an appendix, so she's got a lot more ability to go a lot farther than, you know, a quarter horse or even a Morgan. She can go a lot farther without breathing than some other horses might. You can see that should be, she's breathing properly, but that should be a lot deeper. There she just went.
Yep, I heard it.
Here's a change in how deep that's going now. You know, she's working harder. That's good. There you go. That was better. Yep. Okay, now I'm going to ask her to slow down to a stop again. See the difference?
And then it went away.
Then it went away. Now it's that. That's what I'm talking about, that billows sound. And
It's gone. Yeah.
so, whatever's in there is stuck pretty good, because you don't normally see this. You'll see it 1 out of 15 horses, 10, 12 horses, something like that. Where they get that stuck.
How long have you had her, Laura?
Year and a half.
The way that when she stopped, how big that was, that breath. She's not breathing at all now. I don't even know how she can do that. You know, with the amount of work she just did. It's gone. That's what you're dealing with. That's why she doesn't feel safe. That's whatever that thing that is in there is that's pretty locked up. So we'll see how long it takes her to get there again. Yeah, girl. You need to sleep. And again, listen. Hard anything there? Here it comes. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? You take any of the horses and look them half as much as we have, and you'll see what I'm talking about as far as the breathing. She's trying, her body's trying to get it gone.
And Mark, I've noticed when we've done this with few horses now too, is that the ones who struggle with this, they don't seem to sweat as much until they release all that breath either.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then it's like suddenly they really sweat a lot more.
I worked really, really hard to break that pattern.
Mhm.
that that was the answer. And that might be the answer, but not for this problem. I think I applied the wrong solution, or the right solution to the wrong scenario.
Yeah, and every time that pattern gets broken for her,
Yeah.
it just adds to the time that it's gonna take. You can see what she's doing here. I mean, the body wants to do it, but emotionally she can't let it go.
Wow.
The body's trying to do what it's designed to do. And that's what this is right here. See if she could get her head down a little bit. That would kick things in a little bit more. She's just holding her breath now. After all that, she can still hold her breath.
So if I can get her through this, she'd be a pretty good endurance horse. Huh?
Well, the problem with it is that there's too much tightness in there for her to do that well. Plus, she'd be unpredictable anyway. She's just holding her breath. You know, and she could very well just have a quick recovery time, but the truth of the matter is she's been laid off for 11 weeks.
Almost 3 months.
So she's breathing right off the bat. Very shallow, but it's there. It'd be really nice as if she could blow.
Oh, you know, one of the things that she does when we're out on the trail and I'm trotting her, she does this real gentle little blow.
Mm-hmm.
Very, not a big snort, but just this kind of,
Yeah, see, and even that would be really interesting to see if she ever does that.
yeah, it's always just a real gentle, and I always think, oh, good. You know, I'm always glad
Mm-hmm.
to hear her doing that, but some, you know,
As much as she has worked today, she hasn't done it once.
no.
So she hasn't even bothered to clear her lungs one time. But now you know what you're looking for at least.
Right.
You know, she took that deep breath, and then she was breathing, and then she just locked it up. Here it is again. And there it goes. It's just gone. And this is more what I'm looking for, is to be, let her be there and I'll be here, and just let her, if I step in or do anything like that, again, it just interrupts what. And the problem, unfortunately, the downside to this is that it could very well be that what you've done is broken this up enough to where it may take a little time to get through it. But depending on what it is, we don't even know what caused it, you know.
Yeah.
So this may be one of those things where you bring her out here on a warm day where she's relatively calm, and you start working this a little bit. head down a little bit more, you may see her think about shaking in there. You know, and it may be that she doesn't do it until she gets back into her pen. It usually comes quicker. Okay? That's basically the posture you want, right there. What I mean by that is that the body is relaxed enough to do the job that it needs to do.
Okay.
So that, you know, where her head's relatively level, head and neck are relatively level, even here where she's looking around, everything's still pretty low. And it looks pretty okay. But she's just not breathing very hard at all. If you say great endurance horse, holy cow. Yeah, she passed every check that you'd have. Pass all the respiration checks. But I have a feeling that what she's been doing is she's been trying to get this fixed. The body has been trying to get it fixed, not necessarily the emotional part, but the body has. And it just has gotten her erupted enough times where usually, I mean, even in the worst case that I've ever seen, they don't stop breathing like this. Especially after the amount of work that we've done.
Yeah.
They don't just,
Yeah.
they do that, you know, she stopped, she breathed, she took that huge breath and she started breathing just the way we wanted her to, and then she just stopped. And I don't know how she can do it, to be honest with you.
To me, she's not a bad horse. She's not she doesn't, you know, it's not like she's mean or aggressive. She's, shows some oppositional behavior sometimes. We call it her I don't wanna. And, that's what I've been kind of categorizing it as, is I don't wanna, but I never really looked at it from the perspective of it being an emotional block of why that I don't wanna was coming up.
Right. Yeah, there's a reason for it. And anytime, you know, when you said Mustangs, a lot of times you'll get a 90% Mustang, meaning 90% of the time they're pretty okay, and then 10% of them you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes that's just who they are and how old they have been. You know, older Mustangs, a lot of times you'll get that. And usually this will take care of something like this, but her body isn't doing the work. You know, it's trying to, but something's stopping it from going all the way through. And I don't want to do a lot more with her because of that fetlock. So,
Well, I think I know how I would change my approach, and I got nothing but time, so.
there you go. Yeah, we just don't know here with her how long that's going to take.